All right, good. Well, good morning. My name is Dorsey Atkinson. I'm the pastor here at Life Spring Church. I'm so glad that you chose to join us. Turn to your neighbor beside you and tell them, I'm glad you're here today. And you turn back to that person and say, right back at you. So it's good to have you here today. Listen, we are at a close of a message series today, but I wanted to give you a heads up about where we're heading. I'm going to have a message series that's coming up next week, and I'm just going to give you a little idea of a concept of what it is. How many of you have seen the movie Christopher Robins? Has anybody seen that movie? Does anybody know who Christopher Robins is? Does anybody know who Winnie the Pooh is? Am I talking to anybody in the Winnie the Pooh? Tigger? Does these things sound familiar? Give me some other characters in that. Piglet, Eeyore, Rabbit, Kanga, and Roo, and the owl. There's an owl. Anybody? So I'm going to, the next week's message series is going to be the Gospel according to Winnie the Pooh. I think it's one of the Gospels that was canonized out of the Bible. You know, they just didn't have a place to fit right in there, so I figured I would do that. But we're going to talk about how some of the characters in the Winnie the Pooh books and the series and how some of their traits match up to a lot of people in this world today. And it'll match up to a lot of people in the church especially, and we're going to talk about that beginning next week. But today we're finishing up a message series that is entitled Avoiding Cold Love. And what we're talking about and what we're concluding with today is talking about how do we move from having cold love. Now, you may not be familiar with this, but Jesus at one time was talking to his disciples, and he told them, he said, there's going to come a day when the wickedness and the difficulties of life are going to cause people to turn away, and they're going to become so wicked that the love of many will grow cold. And because of that, many will walk away. But to those who stand firm, to those who stay with me through this, things have changed. And he goes on to say some other things, but my point is, we've been trying to say, well, what does it take to avoid cold love? And what does cold love look like? Cold love is that type of love where you have love and you have care in your heart, but you don't necessarily do anything about it. It's like seeing somebody in a need for help or somebody having a difficult situation, and you're taking a picture of them and Snapchatting, and you put them up on your Twitter feed, and you're doing these things because you see it, but you do nothing to help with them. You walk by and you see and you observe, and we have a hard time transferring the outward expression of love to others, though we claim that we have it on the inside. And we talked about it that when you have this love inside of you, when you have this care for others, it should transfer out and come out and be out for others to see or for others to benefit from. And so I want to talk to you today as we continue on this message series, or we close out, I want to make a confession to you about a problem I have. I have a faith problem. Now, I don't know about you, and I know that you see me as a pastor, and you say, well, man, you shouldn't have a problem with your faith. I just want to explain to you something about pastors or leaders in the church, your Sunday school teacher, your small group teacher. We're just human beings. And putting a title or responsibility on as a pastor doesn't mean that we don't struggle with our faith, that we don't struggle with some of the things that are similar to what you struggle with. We all struggle with difficult things. We all struggle with our faith at some times. We all struggle with our prayer life. Maybe you don't, but if you haven't, I promise you, you will. It's coming. And one of the problems that I have, or one of the things that my concern is, I'm concerned that my faith doesn't look like somebody else's. Emmanuel back there is a good friend of mine, and we went out and had supper together, or lunch together the other day, and we have a real good conversation. We talk about it because Emmanuel is a strong prayer warrior. I mean, he has a faith and a prayer life that's unlike any that I've seen before. Now, he still struggles, and he still has difficulties. But he's been teaching me from his culture in Ghana and been teaching me things. And I thought to myself, man, I wish I had faith like that. My faith doesn't look like Emmanuel's. See, it really doesn't matter what I found out. It really doesn't matter what your faith looks like. Doesn't matter if it looks like that one or looks like that. What matters is, what is your faith like? What is your faith? It matters what your faith is, not what it looks like. And when you go out and do your life and you go through life and you do what you do, it's just what is your faith and how is it being displayed, not whether it looks like somebody else's. And one of the things that I don't know about you, if you struggle with things like this, with your faith, with your prayer life, or maybe you're not where you want to be, or maybe you're not where you'd like to be, or maybe you aren't where you need to be in your walk with God, or maybe with your relationship with a spouse or a loved one, or maybe with your children, or maybe you're just not where you need to be physically, mentally, emotionally, or spiritually. And for some of us, maybe you're not where you need to be financially. And all of these things cause you difficulties. I want you to understand this, that no matter whether you're a good person or a bad person, whether you do a lot of good in the world or you just don't care about the world, it really doesn't matter where you are in your walk. Here's something that you need to understand. There will be times when even good people have bad days. But there will never be a time when stumbling blocks won't be found in your path. I don't care how good you are, I don't care how strong your relationship is with God, there's always going to be stumbling blocks in your life. Something to trip you up, something that could be an obstacle that would cause you to detour from the destination that you're heading to, or something that would trip you up on the way and maybe cause you pain as you scrape. My little granddaughter come in last night and had these Band-Aids all over her knees where she fell in the parking lot and it had skinned up her knees. And you know how the Band-Aids, you sort of see the blood through the Band-Aid sometimes. I'm not trying to gross you out, but you understand what I'm saying. You've seen that before. And she was walking like this. Ooh, don't touch them, Papa. They need air. They're just trying to get better. And I'm like, oh, baby, I'm so sorry. And, and then, for all the evening I was with her, oh, don't touch them, Papa. Don't bump into them. And there's things that are always out there. I don't care how good you are. I don't care how strong you are. I don't care how much of a prayer warrior you are. There will always be stumbling blocks at some point in time that will come up in your path. They'll always be there. The question is, what and how do you overcome them? Or how do you deal with them? Now today I want to talk to you about a story in the Bible. And this story in the Bible hits me at home. It's a story in the Bible that about a guy that I wish I could be like. His name's Joshua. And he had this great, strong walk with God. Joshua was one of these Old Testament characters that are individuals who would lead the Israelite nation into a promised land, would lead them to places God would call them to. He was a man who had seen so much over his life of what God had done, and he was called to do even more. And the story of this goes that the Israelite nation had been rescued out of slavery, of over 400 years of slavery, generation after generation of slavery, and they had been rescued out of this slavery from the Egyptians, and through Moses and some other miraculous events of plagues and things of that nature, God basically delivered these people through miraculous events and saved his people from slavery. And as they came out of this life of slavery and into freedom, they began to come to this promised land that God had promised to their ancestors, that I'm going to give you this land. It's going to be flowing with milk and honey. It's going to be everything you've ever dreamed of. And they get right to that edge of that land, and they send some spies in there and to go check it out. So they got 12 groups of them. They divided up into 12 groups, 12 tribes, if you would. And those 12 tribes sent a representative, one of their warriors, to go do a recon mission. And they sent them across this body of water called the Jordan River. And they go across, they scout out the land, and they come back, and after a long period of time being there, they say, yeah, absolutely. They come back and tell the council, the head people, the leaders of the Jewish nation that have just been brought out of slavery. And Moses is sort of the head one leading them. And so they call this council together, and they sort of tell them, yeah, absolutely, it's everything God said, man. They come carrying a cluster of figs or grapes that took 2 of them that put on a staff, and they had to carry it. They were so much. And it is a land flowing milk. It's everything we've ever dreamed of. And they all start to get excited, and then some of them said, but there's these big giants over there. They're bigger than anybody that we've ever seen before. We feel like grasshoppers in their eyes, and we probably look like grasshoppers in their eyes that they could just stomp on us at any time. And I just don't know if we should go in there. But this guy Joshua, at his younger age, he's a young guy now. He's in probably his late 18, 19, 20, maybe 22, 23. He's a young guy. And he says, no. And he and this other guy, his friend named Caleb, said, if God's called us to go do this, we need to do this. We don't need. We look at what God's done for us already. He's delivered us. Look at all this. And they didn't listen. They took a vote, and they voted 10-2. They said, we're not going to go in. It's too overwhelmed. The obstacle is too big. And it discouraged God. It hurt God. And so he felt like that group wasn't ready to go into that promised land. They weren't ready to handle it. So he had them wander around in the desert for 40 years till all of that generation, all of them that are over 13 years of age, died. And so what you have now is this group of people, just a handful of Moses and Joshua and Caleb, and they're the only ones left, and then there's this huge gap of 40 years to this next generation. So 13-year-old, 12-year-old, 11-year-old, 10-year-olds, sitting all the way down. They saw their mamas die, their daddies die. They saw their brothers or sisters that were older all die. And what happens is Joshua and Caleb becomes their surrogate father, their surrogate uncle. They become their surrogate grandparents because all that they knew had died, and that's all they have. And they've watching these Joshua and Caleb, and they come up to this promised land again 40 years later, and God tells Joshua to be strong and courageous. You're going to lead these people into this land. And so Joshua does. He becomes strong and he becomes courageous, and he leads these people. And they, through a series of events, they took the ark in the front, and as soon as the people carrying the ark of the covenant, which was the 10 Commandments and some other stuff, they stepped in the water. As soon as they did, the water backed up and backed out of their way, and they passed through a huge river into the promised land, and the water closed up behind them. And so here they are. They've made it. God's people who had eaten quail and manna. Quail in the evenings would come into their camp in the middle of the desert where there was nothing out there, but quail would come in. They'd have some meat to eat. And there'd be this mysterious stuff called manna that would come down, and it would be like on the ground, like dew in the mornings, and they could make it and knead it up and make it into biscuits, and they'd have biscuit and quail and probably gravy, and it doesn't get much better than that. Unless you have grits, and they didn't have grits back then, but and cheese grits would have been great. And Ashley's cheese grits is the best that's ever been made. I don't know, but there was no cheese in the grits, but it tasted like cheese grits. I understand. But it was the best tasting grits I've ever had. But they didn't have that. They just had quail and biscuits and gravy. And then they come up, and the first thing God shows them, first place they get to, after all this that they've gone through, we finally arrived. We've followed God. We've been obedient. We've done what He said. We've seen all this, and we get across. We're in the promised land, and the first city we come to is the most well-known city in that region, in that territory. It is called Jericho. And you may not know much about Jericho, but they knew about Jericho, because it is well known that Jericho is a city that could not be taken. Jericho has these mighty walls, these huge walls that are so tall that homes are built in the thickness of the walls. People have dwelling places, apartments, condos, Starbucks, everything you could imagine they have in the walls of this city that goes around. And they were so tall they could have a little patio up there. They may have had swimming pools up on the top. I don't know what they do, a gym to work out in, and some places to sunbathe and all that. I don't know what they had up there, but they were huge. And kingdom after kingdom after kingdom decided they wanted what was in Jericho, and kingdom after kingdom after kingdom got turned away because they couldn't penetrate those walls. And it didn't matter if it was 10,000, 20,000, or 100,000 Israelites that had just been saved, who have been wandering around for 40 years, who just come through there. It didn't matter because these walls were huge. And this is where the story begins that I want to talk to you about today. Joshua 6 says this, "Now the gates of Jericho were securely barred because of the Israelites. No one went out, and no one came in. Then the Lord said to Joshua, 'See, I have delivered Jericho into your hands, along with its king and its fighting men. March around this city once with all the armed men. Do this for 6 days. Have 7 priests carry trumpets of ram's horn in front of the ark, and on the 7th day, march around the city 7 times, with the priests blowing the trumpets. When you hear them sound a long blast on the trumpets, have the whole army give a loud shout. Then the wall of the city will collapse, and the army will go in, everyone straight in.'" Now, I don't know if you caught this. God gave him instructions. So I'm going to see, I just read it once and you read it. I just want to see if you caught any instructions. They're to walk around the city 1 time a day. For how many days? 6 days. And then on the 7th day, what are they supposed to do? Walk around for 7 times. Blow a horn. Give a shout. And the walls come a-tumbling down. And the walls come a-tumbling down. That sounds good. But let's come on back to this day 1. You want me to do what? You want me to take our whole group of people here, and you want me to go for a walk? You know, God, we don't have many weapons. We've been sort of wandering around in the desert for 40 years. We didn't think we needed weapons. We don't have any weapons. You just want us to go walking behind your ark, and you want us to walk today 1 time. And then tomorrow you want me to walk again. And the next day, and the next day, and the next day. And on that 7th day, you want me to walk 7 times. And then the wall's going to come down. I just don't see that. And that's where I want to talk to you about. Why I can't see that. Maybe why you can't see that. See, they're looking out in the future to see what God is saying. God's made this promise to them. Hey, walk it once. Walk it. And then this will happen. I just don't see it. Because I'm going to read you verse 1 again. Listen to verse 1. "Now the gates of Jericho were securely barred." What does that mean? Somebody help me. Talk to me. Help me. What does securely barred mean? Have you got in your mind's eye this image of these big gates? Anybody got the big gates? And then once they got this barred, they put locks on them, or they put the big timber behind them. Is that the image you get in your mind? And then stone walls around this, so the guards are not just barred, they're securely barred. They've been here and done this before. You're not the first rodeo to come into town that wants to take our city. We got it covered. Everybody get in the house, everybody get in the walls, shut the doors, barred up. Then it says, no one went out and no one come in. We ain't letting any spies get in here to infiltrate us. We seen you come across the water. We see hundreds of thousands of you out there. Shut the door. You're not getting in. Now, what does the Israelites see? What do those people see before them? Help me out. What do they see? Impenetrable walls. What else they see? Bars. What else? Obstacles. What else? Floods? Did you say flood? I didn't see a flood. But you might be seeing floods. Your eyes might be watering, but there ain't no flooding right there. What did you see? What did you see? You see this huge wall. You see this great big thing, something that it's never been done before. It's this huge thing. It's this huge obstacle. A wall, it's just huge. What do the people on the inside see? You're in Jericho. You're one of those people. You see security. You see what? The other side of the wall. Which seems like the best side of the wall at this time, right? Because you ain't getting in. You know what they see? They see we've seen this happen before. We've seen people come and we've seen people go, and they come up and try to take us down. It doesn't happen. Never happened. You ain't getting in here. Where is their confidence? In the wall. Their confidence is in the wall. Their confidence is in that wall that protects them and keeps the bad stuff out. And then the Israelites are seeing that wall. But then comes this next phrase. Then the Lord said to Joshua, "See, I have delivered Jericho into your hands along with its king and its fighting men." Now, after we just went through that description of verse 1, I'll just be honest with you. I don't see it. I see walls, man. I see walls. God is telling Joshua, "See, I have," what's that word say? Delivered. Is that present tense or past tense? Meaning it's what? But I don't see it. I don't see it. And that's what the situation is in my life. It's not a wall. It's other obstacles in my life. Might be my finances. That wall's never going to be penetrated. That wall's never going to be conquered. That I don't see it. God's telling me you can do it. Go ahead and make an offering. Go ahead and give a gift to the church. Go ahead and spend this money and do this for somebody else. Go ahead and help somebody. Go ahead and meet a need when you see a need. All I see is a wall. I can't see past the wall. And it's always there. Or maybe it's a relationship. Maybe you've got a damaged relationship with somebody, and it might be a parent, it might be a sibling, it might be someone else, and you just see a wall, and God is saying, you need to speak to that person. You need to have a conversation with them. You need to talk about this. You need to forgive them. You need to ask for forgiveness, and you're going, it's just a wall. It's going to be better. Just do these things. It's going to be better. I promise you, if you do these things, the wall will come a-tumbling down, and you just go, I don't see it. I just see a wall. Some of you in this room are very lonely. You've been hurt. You struggle with who you are and your identity of what you're becoming. And that loneliness sometimes is like a wall. You can be around people but not be with people. And it hurts. Some of you have lost loved ones before in your life. And you think, I will never get over this. I will never get through this. I can't get, it's just too big. Physical, mental, emotional, spiritual, financial, the list goes on and on of walls that seem like we can never get through them. I'm trying to make a decision of where I'm going to live, what I'm going to do, where I'm going to move to, how I'm going to do, and it's just impossible. I can't see, God. I can't see what you see, God. So the question I ask, is it important to see what God sees in order to do what God asks? Is it important for you to see what God sees in order for you to do what God asks? Do you think Joshua had this godly vision to see the future and see the walls come tumbling down? You know, they have this mental image. You know, even golfers do the mental image of what you want the ball to do, just to make this visualization. Do you think that's what Joshua had? Had this visualization to be able to see the future and make the future happen and do this. Yeah, I don't think so. See, because here's what I've come to find. I don't have to see what God sees in the future to know God will do what He says, because I've already seen Him do it. Joshua and the people had seen what God had done in their life. This group of people were born in slavery, and they're no longer enslaved. and they saw it at the hand of God. This people walked through a water dry, and then the water collapsed in on Pharaoh's army. This people wandered for 40 years and never run out of food. This people went around and never was attacked. Shoes never wore out. Their clothes never wore out. They saw a lot of damage. They saw a lot of destruction. They saw a lot of death. But God always was there and did for them. Even to the point of coming into the promised land, they passed through water again. See, my whole struggle has been, I thought I was supposed to see what God is going to do. I have to see it to believe it. I gotta see it. But the fact is, if I look over my shoulder, I can see where He's already done it before. Because I don't know about you, but He's done miracles in my life. And I can't even remember them all. He done miracles when I was in middle school. I was worried about kissing a girl one time. I was worried about asking her out on a date. And He did a miracle. He let me ask her out. Now, she said no, but that's okay. And that wasn't the one I kissed either. So there you go. There's miracles that He done in my life. When my grandfather died, I did not think I could make it. I did not think there could be that much pain in this world. And at 16 years old, I thought I knew the maximum pain that a person could feel physically and emotionally and mentally because of a loss of a loved one. Later on down life, I found out differently when my father died. Because that pain can magnify it. But do you know how I got through my father's death? Because the same God who got me through my grandfather's death was there for me when my father's died. I didn't have to see my way through. I didn't have to see what the future looks like. All I had to know was that God was with me before and He'll be with me again. My finances. I don't have to see where God's going to take me. I just have to obey Him based off what I've already seen Him do. See, some of you are in a state of loneliness or struggle or hopelessness. But I'm just going to suggest to you this isn't your first time. I'm going to suggest to you there's probably been other times that you didn't know how you were going to make it through. And God was there. And in the moment that it happened, you recognized and you were like, I cannot believe God has helped me. I cannot believe. And then a few years down the road, you forgot. I had a friend of mine recently, he's not here today, but he normally is here, who in a conversation yesterday said, I know God's real. And he went on to tell this whole story of financial difficulties, and he told a story about a scratch-off and winning $5,000. And he believes God's real now. Now, I don't know if God is in a scratch-off, but I know right now for that guy, God was in a scratch-off. And He provided for him. And he sees it as that, but my question and my concern is, will 5 years down the road, will he forget that when he's in a mess again? And will he think that that's all I'm supposed to do is buy scratch-offs? See, a wall of Jericho, that ain't parting water. They're different. They're two different things. One's water, one's solid. But the belief, the faith to go off of what God has done in your past transfers to the other. The God that helped me through the death of loved ones in my life is the same God that helps me in these other situations. See, I don't have to see what God's doing for me to do what God's asking. I don't have to see what the end results is for me to do what God's asking, because I've already seen what He's done with me. I just forget. I've seen God move mountains, and He'll do it again. I think about these guys walking around the walls and what thought must have been going through their head. Just walking. And on day one, okay, it's day one. But now it's day two. We got to get back up and go do it again. You know, God, that wall's still there. I walked yesterday. And then day three, they get up and they walk again, and they walk around, and they're having the conversation. Man, that's 3 days, man. What do you think? I don't know, man. I don't know. I'm going to walk one more day and just see how it is. And they make it to day 4, and they walk, and could you imagine any of them dropping out? Would you drop out? Today in our world, I would say that 70% of the people would drop out in day 4. 70%, I'm estimating, would not drop out in day 4. You know why? Because they're not patient. We want it now, we want it now, we want it now, I want it when I want it. And they'd drop out. They'd walk day 5. Another 5% would drop out. They'd walk day 6, another 5. Then we get to day 7. Oh, we're going to knock out a bunch on day 7 because you know what? They're going to get up and think they're going to walk one time because they got used to walking one time for 6 days, and they come up and they do that 7th day walk and they finish that lap and they're fixing to head back to their tent, and it's like, we got 6 more today. I'm out of here. You ain't making me do that. And they're out of there, right? That's our culture, isn't it? But that's not theirs. Do you know why? Because that entire group had seen what God had done. And they didn't forget. I don't care if he tells me to walk 15 times and do a headstand at the end and spit BBs out of my mouth. I'm doing it. Because I've seen what he's done before. He's moved mountains and he'll move them again. As some way or another, to avoid this cold love, we have to learn to move from this current culture's teaching that you got to see it and you got to own it and you got to take it and you got to go after it, and when you can't see it anymore, then stop. I'm telling you, you need to look back over your shoulder and see what he's already done for you. He's provided you homes. He's provided you breath. He's provided you life. He's provided for you financially. He's given you hope. He's been with you during the deepest, darkest, hurting moments of your life, and he's never wavered. I'm walking around these walls, and I thought they'd fall by now. I'm just walking. But see, our faith is not in what we have yet to see, but in what we've seen.